I introduced you to property binding, and we can set up our own bindable properties with @input in front of them. Now, I told you that we would be receiving our person list data here in our persons component thanks to our custom property binding. But how can we now render our persons to our actual DOM? Well, for that, in the persons component, we want to go to the persons component HTML file and output the content of this person list. Let's say we want to create an unordered list here with a bunch of list items, and we want to repeat that list item for every element in our person list. Now, in traditional JavaScript, we would write a for loop, but here we are in HTML code. And yes, this will be converted to JavaScript kind of, but here we still are in HTML. Well, we can use another important feature provided by Angular, which is called a directive. We can add a directive to HTML elements, and a directive is basically an instruction inside of our HTML code, which will be understood by Angular to do something. And here, one of the built-in directives is star ng4, and the star is important here. This is a directive which ships with Angular, and which is actually unlocked by importing browser module here. ng4 can be used to set up a for loop in HTML code, so to say. It's only available in Angular templates, but there we can use it. We add an equal sign and then double quotes, and between the double quotes, we write our looping logic. And this syntax is close to the normal JavaScript for loop. We use let, and then any variable name you want, like person, but that name is up to you, of, and now you need to reference either a value like an array, or, just as we did it in app component, a property of this persons component. So person list is a property of the persons component. So in the persons component template, we can reference it, person list. What this will do is it will create a new list item for every element in person list. And it will actually store this element it's currently looking at for every iteration in this person variable. And we can use this person variable inside of this repeated element. And if we want to output the person, which is just a string here in the end because we have a list of strings, then we can use another binding syntax. We saw property binding with the square brackets. Now another binding syntax Angular offers is so-called string interpolation. And that uses double curly braces. And you use that anywhere where you can output text in HTML. Like here, between the opening and closing tag. You could enter any text here, like hello. Or, since you can use text here, you use the double quotes. And then you can reference either a property of your component, like person list, but that wouldn't work because it's an array and we don't want to output the full array here. We instead want to output the element for which we recreated this list item. So we can output person, this variable here. And if we now save this, what you will see is, if you go back to your page, it should have automatically reloaded, and you have 3 bullet points for the 3 items in your persons list, which is in the app component, which is passed down to persons thanks to property binding, and which is then output thanks to this directive and string interpolation.